Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Trojan Talk as we wrap up, we'll call it the season finale here as we wrap up the school year of 2020-2021. I'm Jeff Christenberry alongside Zach Taranko, of course. Zach, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you? It's a nice Thursday out.
It's an excellent, it's a Thursday, and for me it's my last ever day of teaching because I'm moving on, as I think I said before, into a marketing role here at the school. So I'm not going anywhere, but I'm not going to be teaching anymore. So this is it's a lot of senioritis, like I said, but it's been a good ride, but ready to move on to a new challenge. And why not spend one of the last classes we have on Trojan Talk?
Exactly.
So, huge week of sports here that's happened since we were last on the air, and still a lot to come, all about playoffs. So let's just run down the whole gamut here. We're recording this on Thursday. It's airing on Friday, so there's a couple updates we'll talk about. So Boys Across is out. Their reign as Class A state champions that's been since 2018, because they won 18 and 19.
Yep.
Obviously nothing in 20. So their reign is over as they fall to Scarborough last night. I think final score was like 9-6.
Yeah.
It seemed like in watching the highlights, TA was up early, and then Scarborough came back, and these are two teams that played close every time they played this year. They've been rivals for several years, and this was a road game for TA, and just not enough firepower, and they weren't able to kind of mount the comeback. So they fall. Scarborough moves on. What's interesting is that side of the bracket is just totally loaded.
Yep.
So I talked to Coach Hersey. The winner, I think Scarborough goes to play Berwick Academy, who's usually doesn't play in the MPA, but was able to this year. So the chances of them getting a three-peat were going to be very small because they lost so many players as well.
Yeah.
But the Scarborough game, I think, talking to Coach Hersey before the year, all the Scarborough games were ones that they thought they could and should win. Or at least toss-ups. So Scarborough wins the last one of them. So what would you, kind of looking back here, what would you say about the Boys Lacrosse team this year? What were your overall impressions?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously they had a pretty young team, and it wasn't really what they not what they didn't want, but something that they weren't really expecting, and didn't have much time to prepare for the season. And some of those guys like John Leopoulos, they stepped in, they played well this season. And hopefully they can have a good season next year, and those guys will have more experience. But yeah, I mean, not surprised that they didn't get all the way there. Obviously, it's a tough one, and Scarborough was that game. It's 50-50. You don't really know who's going to win. They split the games in the regular season, so but it wasn't a terrible game. It could have been. If it was like 18-3,
right,
then you'd say okay, they didn't play very well. But 9-6 isn't bad, and hopefully next year they can. Play well, and hopefully the playoffs is there's no COVID breaks, and it's all nice and long.
Yeah, they do have a lot of youth. I mean, they'll definitely be a team to reckon with for several years ahead. But tough way to go out. Especially to Scarborough of all teams, because they've had so many battles in the past. But hats off to the Boys Lacrosse team. Came back. Had a lot of new kids, a lot of freshmen that played. So bright future ahead for them. But they are out. Girls Lacrosse, they go on the road on Wednesday, play Marshwood, a team who, again, what's so odd about these playoffs is a lot of you don't have a lot of scouting because a lot of these teams didn't play anybody that you played. Same with Marshwood. TA goes down in that game, I think 8-3, halftime, and they had this huge comeback, and they win in overtime. So just a crazy comeback for them, and we've seen that team really go hot and cold this year in the broadcast that we've done. And personally, looking at it, I was actually surprised that they came back from such a deficit, because that's not easy in any case in girls lacrosse. But when you give up 8 goals in the first half and you only give up 1 in the second half, that's quite a turnaround.
Yeah, it was a great turnaround in that game, and to win in the first round is nice. Obviously, they're going to have a tough challenge going in on Friday to play Kennebunk, who they lost to earlier in the season. But their season was kind of, it was, I wouldn't say not consistent, but these big teams like Kennebunk, they're losing in big scores, and their wins are little smaller scores or more tight games, and they're winning in nice fashion. But they didn't have a terrible season, and I think they were under 500, but by one.
I think they were right about 500.
Yeah,
so
by the end of it. Not a terrible season, and with COVID, it was made it even harder. But yeah, I mean, this is a great comeback win, and it's nice to have something like that. Even if you're gonna go and I'm not gonna call them out against Kennebunk, but the last game was pretty widespread scoring. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think. I guess you'd probably say they're playing with house money at this point.
Yeah,
definitely.
Even
if they would have lost to Marsh, it would have been like, look, good season, but they had that moment, and that's really what high school sports are all about. You have those moments. You're not always going to win a state championship. Only one team wins it. To come back like that, score, and I think it was only 5 or 6 seconds left in overtime.
Yeah.
Which they have a habit of that when they go to overtime, scoring with just a few seconds left in the overtime. So huge congrats out to girls across. They play Friday today against Kennebunk at Kennebunk. So and we're going to notice Kennebunk has kind of been a team that has kind of wrecked some of our spring sports here.
Yeah.
We go through some of the other sports here. So good luck to girls lacrosse team as they head to the Class A South semifinals. Awesome for them. Okay, so baseball. So again, we're recording this on a Thursday. So they're playing. By the time you listen to this, they've already played. But let's talk about their first round matchup against the 16 seed. And they ran up against one of the best pitchers in Maine in a very, very long time. And it was a 1-0 game in the end. Obviously, Cody Bowker came out and had a great game on the mound as well. He pitched not the whole game. I think he pitched 6 innings, and they came in for the save. They got a run late on. A lot of upsets in baseball. The 2 seed, Scarborough, lost, as did the 3 seed. Now, that doesn't affect TA in the next couple rounds because they're still playing the 8 seed, Wyndham, who their pitcher – they play Gorham. They beat them in the first round. They play Gorham, whose pitcher threw a no-hitter last game. Obviously can't pitch in this game, so this TA should still be the favorites. But for a while, again, it's looked like TA baseball, again, top seed, but they look like they may have gone out to a 16 seed. But what do you think about them now getting over that first hump and their chances at going deep, especially because a lot of their biggest rivals are now out?
Yeah, it's obviously great for them to pass the hump. And, I mean, I would say because they've struggled so much in the first round, to see them win in a really close game is not very surprising. Obviously, it's a young team, and the first game is going to be a hard one. I know they won they had a prelim game where it was like 3-1, which is still pretty close, but a good win. And eventually in the end, it might help them out that the number 2 and 3 seeds are not going to be in the tournament. But yeah, they're getting the good end of that the no-hitter pitcher is not going to be able to pitch, which is unfortunate for Gorham, but they'll have a good job. And Bowker played well, so that's really all they want. And hopefully they can win. I think that's one of my pick for who's going to win the state title of all the spring sports.
And that's what it comes down to in baseball. You need that second pitcher because you've seen it time and time again for every team. It's like you have that one stud pitcher. He goes and wins a game, but then you got to win the regional final, and then you got to win the state championship. So a lot of question marks there. So good luck to the baseball team as well. They'll have home games through the next 2 rounds. So if they win, they play Saturday, and then if they win that game, they play either Tuesday or Wednesday at St. Joe's. So the regional final in the states are at St. Joe's, as they always are. Moving on to softball, they had a game against South Portland, a 5-12 matchup. They also were in some big trouble, even bigger trouble than baseball. They were down in that game 3-0, and then it was late on. It was 3-2.
Yep.
They come back, they tie the game, it goes into extra innings, and then we have a lightning/thunder delay. No rain actually fell, and it was just like the storm's going to our south, but they heard thunder, and as soon as you hear thunder, you wait 30 minutes.
Yeah.
The problem is they heard thunder twice, like 20 minutes apart, and so it got to a point where it was like 7:15, so it's still light out, but it's starting to get a little dusk, and if they found another thunder, they probably would have had to call the game, which was in the 9th inning at the time.
Yep.
Because TA was up. And the rule is if you call a playoff game, you start all over from scratch the next day. Ooh. You don't start off where you left off. You start from scratch. So thankfully they got it in. TA, I think they had a runner on or 2 runners on with 1 out. They restart the game. Within 2 batters, they'd won the game. Yep. So they move on to the next round. They played Portland, who scored a big upset the other day. So again, by the time you were listening to this, they would have either won or lost because they played on Thursday. But again, what do you think? What do you think for their chances? In terms of going deep, it's one thing where you can have pretty much the same pitcher go every game, but you can have comebacks like we saw the other day.
Yeah, they've had a couple of comebacks this season. They had a very good season too, and I think that baseball and softball are kind of in the same spot right now, and those 2 sports are so hard. It's like, you don't have to be, even if you're not the best team, your pitcher plays well, you might win the game. So upsets aren't very uncommon. I wouldn't be surprised if softball, struggles or plays well against Portland, but that's Thursday's gonna be, at least by the time people hear this, Thursday will have been a big game because baseball and softball both play. But yeah, they had a great season, and it's like every TA spring sport has a young team. The lacrosse team, I know the baseball team has a lot of sophomores. I know the softball team has a couple of great freshmen. So a lot of young teams, but they're playing well. So hopefully one sport can pick up a state title.
Yeah, and if you're hearing stuff in the background, it's because it's a lot of movies going on in the last week of school, as if you can imagine. So if you hear that in the background, that's what's going on. All right, before we head to our last sport we're going to talk about, which is tennis, we're going to head to our interview of the day, which we're very lucky to have today the athletic administrator, Mr. Gary Stevens. He's been here at TA for more than 10 years now. He was at Bonnie Eagle before as well. He's been at a couple different schools and is very well respected both in the state and the region for his administrative abilities and everything else. So, Zach, why don't you take it away and interview Mr. Stevens?
We want to welcome in the TA Athletic Director, Gary Stevens, to answer a couple questions today. Gary, how are you?
Doing very well, Zach. Yourself?
I'm doing great. So, first off, what has it been like to be the Athletic Director of TA during COVID?
Well, certainly the last 15 months is nothing that any of my training or experience had really prepared me for, nor I don't think any other athletic director in Maine or any of the other states that have experienced what we've been going through. I think the only thing we've had as a model for what to do was examples provided during the 1918 pandemic, and we have a lot of photographic evidence that professional athletics and collegiate athletics use masking with spectators and participants, and obviously that's been one of our fundamental skills throughout the whole experience. Thornton Academy during 1918's pandemic, ironically, actually had a full athletic season. They had a 7-game football season, which was pretty standard for that time, and a basketball season. But the athletic director from that time, Ralph Sanborn, didn't leave me any playbook. I've looked through my office from top to bottom, and I haven't seen any documentation of what he did and how he got through that. So literally, we've been writing this script as we have been experiencing it. And the key has been schools and athletic directors working together, not just here in southern Maine, but throughout the whole state and then the country as a whole, collaborating and coming up with ideas and best practices, learning from the experience of others. Iowa was the first state in the country that actually had sports interscholastically back in June. They traditionally play their baseball and softball during the summer months. And actually, I made a connection with a gentleman by the name of Scott Jarvis, who was an athletic director at Ankeny Centennial High School. And I've been working with him for over a year to find out what he did, his communication tools, his setups. Those things really helped us here at Thornton Academy once we got athletics underway back in October.
Yeah. So just want to ask, what do you think the biggest challenge during the COVID times, or at least during the sports times, has been for you as an athletic director or just you as a person?
And I would say really it's probably one and the same. The biggest challenge for me has been to try to be very nimble in my communications. It's one of those situations where you are in a situation that is totally fluid. Regulations, guidelines change by the week and sometimes by the day and sometimes by the minute. Just to give you an example, we sent a cross-country team to Noble back during our very short fall season, and literally while they were en route on the bus, the guidelines related to masking changed. When they got on the bus, they were under the impression they did not have to mask while competing, but the state changed the guidelines literally while they were en route, and we had to enforce those guidelines. That's the type of challenge you're dealing with. So my situation has been one where I have been trying to communicate to parents, coaches, and the students what we have to do, but also when I've had to deliver bad news, do so in a way where you try to remain upbeat and hopeful and try to keep people's confidence and spirits up. And that really has been the biggest challenge. I mentioned being nimble. There's a fine balance between delivering news, sometimes which could be bad or disappointing, but also trying to keep people's hopes up that we're heading in the right direction and hang in there and we're going to get there. And that's not easy to do. In fact, just one quick anecdote. I did have actually a former student of mine who is currently a TA parent actually emailed me. In fact, I had him as a student 30 years ago. He still calls me Mr. Stevens, even though our age differential is not that much now. And he actually sent me an email saying, can you take me off your email list? No disrespect, until you have some good news. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite moments and favorite communications during the pandemic is, and it sort of shows that people wanted something positive. They didn't need another bad story.
Yeah. So obviously, you're the athletic director and you've been, observing the sports in last fall and the spring. How do you feel that the athletes of all sports responded to the restrictions?
I've said this to individual student athletes and to teams that really, for the most part, the students have done everything that we've asked them to do. And even when you have an individual or team, maybe they sort of slide or slack a little bit, once you give them the reminder, they have been responsive to it. So that's really been the case since the beginning. Our goal when we started was to do everything possible to compete and do everything possible to complete our seasons. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that opportunity certainly in the fall. We had a school decision where we had to go fully remote with 1 week to go in that athletic season. But up until that point, people had done what we'd asked. We were able to complete our winter season, although there were teams that had COVID restrictions periodically from time to time, but we got through that. In the spring, for the most part, we've been very fortunate to the point where now we are in the midst of the postseason, and we're 1 week and a half away or so now from the NPA season being totally finished, and the finish line is certainly in sight. So, I think that's really a credit to our student athletes and coaches who have done what was asked of them, even if it wasn't something that they wanted to do or were comfortable doing.
So obviously, spring sports, we had some fans in the stands for lacrosse games and some of the softball and baseball games. How does it feel to have fans back for those sports?
Well, I tell you, one of the greatest days during this pandemic experience was the day where they lifted the outdoor masking mandates, and they changed the capacity so that we would be able to offer fans the opportunity to come to our facilities. We actually prepared for, everybody having to be masked and have also hand sanitizer available and trying to work on social distancing. And we had actually done a communication with the parents through a little quick Zoom video I put together. One of my new skills from COVID has been learning how to use Zoom and Google and some of those types of things. And ironically, within a couple of weeks, everything we had explained they had to do, they no longer had to. So it was great not having to be the monitor of that, allowing people to come to games and not have to worry about somebody reminding them to put on a mask or stay with your family, that type of thing. But besides, and that's more from my perspective, a more of a selfish type of thing, because I would be the one having to manage that. But it has been great seeing people back cheering on their students, or students back in the stands cheering on their peers. It certainly added a lot of atmosphere to our events. It started back in April when we were allowed to go to 50%, and we actually let fans into 2 volleyball games. The people who were led were essentially family members and direct guests of the participants. And the feedback we got from the students, we heard this at our senior athletic awards night from some of those senior volleyball players, was it was the greatest atmosphere they had ever participated in, because they're playing to crickets one day, and then they have people in the stands, and they're playing Biddeford, the rival school, and there were community members from both schools there, and it was a great match, and I was just very excited for those students to have that opportunity, and certainly for all of our students in the spring who've had the chance to play before fans.
Yeah. So we're going to stray off the COVID topic here and just talk about being an athletic director. In your opinion, what is the biggest misconception of being an athletic director?
I think the biggest misconception is that it's all about just somebody who goes out and gets to watch games. In fact, we do, but there's so much more to it than that. An athletic director's role is a leadership role. You have to provide leadership for, obviously, the coaches. You have to provide leadership for your school, your student athletes, and also you are the face of your franchise. We all have a brand. Every school has its own brand and what it represents and what it stands for, and you have to live up to that. And not every person can serve in any school. I've been an athletic director in 2 schools, two very different settings, and although my personality probably hasn't changed that much, you have to approach things differently based on where you are. There are some people who are not good fits for certain communities. And so you have to really understand what that community is about, what its culture is, what its belief system is, what its traditions are, and understand that and then try to promote that through your work. So I think, again, one of the biggest misunderstandings is that it is somebody who just goes out there, schedules games. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in terms of the organization. COVID has made that very challenging because you already have a very busy, thick set of list of things you need to do, and it's just adding another layer to that makes it challenging. But it's what I've been doing for 25 years.
Yeah.
And my pathway brought me to the profession and brought me to Thornton Academy, and I'm very grateful for that.
If there was one thing as an athletic director that you could change or add to high school athletics in general, or even TA high school athletics, what would that be?
And that's a great question. I think one of the things that in athletics, the only thing that is constant is change. Things have evolved very much. For the time when I was a student in the late 70s, I started coaching around 1983, my senior year in college. I worked at a private school in Boston, was a freshman girls volleyball coach, and then my coaching career, which took about 14 years, to now being an AD, it's things certainly have evolved. I guess if I could do anything and make any impact and sort of wave a magic wand, is one of the things I think we've seen in athletics in recent years is at times a loss of decorum from what I remember as a student. Now, there are always been spectators who sometimes go over the top.
Yep.
And that happened in the 70s. I can tell you that very much so. That hasn't changed. But at times, I've seen in recent years just the idea of decorum and decency. When I was in high school, you didn't see opposing players ridden by student sections. Just didn't happen. There seemed to be a little bit more of a respect there. You had certainly intense competition, but it was not that community versus community wasn't as pronounced. I don't think as maybe has gotten to be today. So really, one of the things I think we need to do is continue to work on finding a way back to proper decorum. And the ironic thing is that creates job security for people like me, because it's our job to help educate the community, educate our students about how to be good fans, how to be respectful fans, how to be good sports. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about as ADs in recent years, that we yearn for the days, maybe 20, 30 years ago, where it seemed a little more respectful than it has gotten to at times. I think one of the big reasons for that is you look at the professional collegiate ranks and look at how athletes behave, and I think people mimic what they see.
Yep.
And with almost every major college game, and certainly all the professional games, televised, and people see how spectators behave and how players behave. People model what they see, and so that's a problem that we have. It is a self-perpetuating problem, because today's high school fans will become tomorrow's college fans. So we need to work on that now.
Yep.
And that's sort of one of my things I'd like to see is to return to a time when we had a little more decorum. We do now.
Yeah.
1 second before you ask the last question. Isaac, you can go to lunch.
Okay. So just to end here, what is your favorite moment from this year of sports, at TA at least?
That's a great question. We've had some really great moments, despite everything that we have been through this year. I would say certainly near the top of the list was the first day we came back. I actually had been, about a week or two before that, I'd been interviewed by Channel 13 and Dave Eade. And Dave actually, he did the piece because he wanted to show the audience what had been missing. And he was really an advocate for somehow getting kids back on the fields. And we were commenting as we're doing the interview out at Hill Stadium how quiet it was. And that's just not what the facility is supposed to be about. But the school has been quiet. We haven't been at full capacity on any given day, so it's just how quiet it was. Schools are noisy. It's part of the interaction. It's part of the social interaction. It's part of the fabric of what the school's all about. And then once we started on that very first day, I heard obviously whistles. I heard laughter. I heard coaches trying to instill some pride in their kids. We started to hear some of those noises of athletics, and it was very slow coming because we had been apart, and I think it was hard to figure out how do we get back to where we used to be. So that certainly was one of my favorite days, was the day that we came back, and the same thing for each season, that coming back together. There have been some game moments that certainly have been fun and exciting as well. I remember a very cold night where actually the masks were a blessing because it kept your face warm, where you had TA and Bon Eagle going in a 7-on-7 football scrimmage. No scoreboard, activity going on both ends of the field, but there was competition. They were going at it.
Yeah.
There were two teams that were probably predicted preseason maybe to come back to the state championship game that weren't going to have that chance, it turned out.
Yep.
But they're going at it. And that was an exciting moment. I mentioned the volleyball, the Biddeford Thornton volleyball game was certainly an exciting moment because the first time we had fans. I remember having a senior recognition ceremony following the last boys basketball game. We had worked the parents into the lineup as game day workers so they could watch their son play for the last time. And you were there. You saw it.
Yeah, we had some of them working for us.
Exactly. I had them running stats to you, and I had them taking pictures, and I had Mrs. Labby keeping everything sparkling clean and germ-free. I mean, they were all working. Mrs. Griffin was doing my Twitter for me. It was pretty cool. But after the game, after Gorm had left, and after everything was done, we had just a wonderful moment of fellowship and togetherness, and a restoration of some sort of order. So those are the moments that stand out to me. And you might notice that none of them really had to do with a score or a buzzer beater or a game winner or a great play. They were just moments of normalcy that were just wonderful to experience.
Yeah, well, obviously, that's been the best part about, even with COVID, to be able to have some normalcy. We want to thank Gary Stevens, the TA Athletic Director, again for coming in and answering some questions, and we'll head on to the rest of the episode.
All right, well, we want to thank again Gary Stevens for coming in to join us today. Obviously, a very busy year for him and all athletic directors, and I think he's going to take a much-needed long vacation this summer.
Yeah.
Because before you know it, it's going to be August 15th maybe is the date this year. It's pretty early, where fall sport practices will begin, and hopefully we're all back to normal. So, as we were talking before about TA playoff sports, let's talk about the last one, which is tennis. Let's start with the girls' tennis team. Those Kennebunk Rams, they got us again.
Yeah.
The first time those two teams played, TA won 3-2. This was in the playoffs. In the playoffs, Kennebunk comes back. They win 3-2. Girls tennis team, again, some solid international players, but also some younger players as well. So with a new coach, what do you see the future for the girls tennis team? And it's a tough one to lose here at home.
Yeah, obviously, unfortunately, they couldn't win in the regional semis. I know the boys were lost, but a little bit farther up. Obviously, the tennis team had a great year, and I know that a lot of those teams are made up with the international students who are very skilled at that sport. I think I'm not sure. Some of them stay, I think, for almost all 4 years. Others a couple.
It really depends on the country they're from.
But mostly, the tennis teams are always pretty good. So I know that next year they'll have a good team, and same as the boys.
So yeah, and talking about boys tennis, before we get to that boys tennis team, we have a boys tennis JV player joining us here today. Who's going to join us here for the rest of the podcast. We have freshman Cole Purvis. Cole, how you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Not too bad. Hopefully excited at the end of the year coming up.
Definitely,
yeah. So let's talk about boys tennis. So we'll just do the kind of the highlights here. Boys tennis team reaches they beat Portland 3-0 on the same day that the girls team lost. With the weather delay, they ended up winning 3 matches, and they just called it because it was going to rain.
Yep.
They move on to the regional finals yet again. I think it's like 9 out of 10 years or something crazy like that TA boys tennis has made it to the regional final. They play up in Lewiston, and they lose a tough one to Kennebunk as well.
Yeah.
They win the first 2 matches, and then it comes down to the doubles team. I think it was the first doubles, and it went to a third set. And TA was down 5-2 in that third set, came back to tie at 5-5, but then Kennebunk wins the last two games to win 7-5. So fall just short of the regional title. But Coach Andy Carlson and Dr. Chris Cole, the assistant, they do a great job with that. A lot of international students on that as well. But Cole, you're part of the team, so tell me what it was like this year watching some of those guys at the varsity level play, and are you surprised they went so far?
I'm not surprised at all we went so far. Kennebunk, the only team we lost to in the regular season, we had to match up. We knew we would have to go through them. They have the best kid in the state. He won the singles state championship, and it was looking pretty good for us for a while, but it all came down to that third set, and it was intense. And unfortunately, we kept coming back, though. Even in that third set, they got a lead, and then our 2 kids came back, but we didn't finish the deal. but it was still a great season, and we had a very deep team. Coach Cole kept saying that to us, that this was one of the deepest teams we ever had, and I'm sure next year will be great. We have a lot of seniors, but we have a couple of stars that are returning again. A lot of residential kids were really good for us, and hopefully I can be on varsity next year.
Yep.
But
So,
you're fairly new to the sport. At the JV level, are there a lot of kids like yourself that are new to the sport and it takes a while to get used to it, or?
Yeah, definitely. Some kids, there isn't a lot of experience. Some kids have been playing 2 or 3 years, but a lot of kids were just trying it out. And I think we had great coaches to help us learn the sport and get pretty good at it. And I'm very happy with how I did this season. So looking forward to next year.
Awesome. So yeah, boys tennis, another great season. Fell just short of another trip to the state championship game, but I think a bright future ahead. So really, we're down to just 3 teams remaining: girls lacrosse, baseball, and softball. As Zach said, baseball probably the best chance to go to a state championship, but we'll have to wait and see. By the time you're listening to this, they've either advanced to the semifinals or been out. So, all right. So moving on from TA Sports, let's talk about the Bruins first. So the Bruins are done.
Yep.
I think pretty shocking fashion. I mean, for me, I thought the series was over after their overtime victory early in the series in Game 3.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, they're up 2-1. They're going to roll probably in 5 games. What do you think? Again, boil it down to one problem. I mean, we talked about Carlo going out. Tuukka Rask has obviously been a huge talking point.
Not 100% throughout
since
the first couple games in that series.
So what do you think was the one thing that separated these two teams and saw 3 straight wins by the Islanders to wrap it up?
Well, as somebody who looks at the Bruins at like an outside standpoint, I'd say the injuries. I'd say no Carlo, no Kevin Miller, Curtis Lazar didn't play Game 6, and they had to move a lot of stuff around. I think that the third line, the fourth line, and even the second line didn't play very well in the last couple games. And I know we came close in Game 5, but we shouldn't be giving up 3 goals in the second and third, and same thing in that last game. But as a Bruins fan, I would say the officiating. I think that in a couple of those games, it was like 6 or 8 times in the game there was something that could have been called a trip, and the only 2 times the referees are calling it is against the Bruins. And I knew that Coach Bruce Cassidy was a little frustrated with that. And I got the whole, I don't know if you know about the New York Saints.
I heard,
Yeah, about the...
didn't really help, did it?
The penalties. No, it didn't.
No.
I'm not surprised. I know that they struggled really hard in the regular season to win games against the Islanders, and, but I'm a Nathan McKinnon fan, so we still have Game 6 is on Thursday night, so we'll see. You guys will know if they won, but I'm not surprised. I think that we would have won, and then we would have gone and lost to Tampa.
Tampa's pretty good, yeah.
So I don't think that we would have gone very far. But I'm happy with our team. I think we're going to give Taylor Hall a contract. I think we're going to get a bunch of those guys a contract. We should be able to get through the extension draft pretty well with Seattle, the new team, and then next season we'll be very good.
Back to the same old. The same crew going back at it one more time. At some point, this team's going to break up. It's going to be really interesting.
I mean, Pasternak has 6 years, so he's here for a while. But Marchand and Bergeron are within 2-3 years left. So at some point, they're going to have to.
And age will take a toll at some point.
I mean, if they fail next year, they might. I'm not gonna call this out because I would hate this, but like legitimately, they trade Bergeron. They're not gonna get much for someone like Bergeron or Krejci, but you trade them away to get some newer guys in there.
Yeah, definitely some players who didn't play very well. DeBrusque got a lot of stuff as well. So, but once Carlo went down, that seemed to be
that was the end of it.
I thought we still would have lost the series if it weren't for the officiating. It was just the Islanders were too physical around the net, and bad goaltending by Rask, and the Islanders definitely had the advantage with goaltending. I have a question for you. Do you think that hit on McAvoy last night was a penalty?
Oh Lord, I'm not sure. I think that there's no need to give a suspension in Game 6 when they've already won. I mean, at that point in the game, it was already 4-1. Like it's just not something they really have to worry about. I do think it was kind of unnecessary by Palmieri, but it is what it is. He was able to get back up and finish the game, so that's not anything I'm worried about. But yeah, I mean, as much as I hate Tampa Bay, good. Give Palmieri a suspension. He doesn't get to play. There'll be one guy down. That's all.
I think it's interesting as far as look at next year. The goaltending is a huge question because I think with the officiating, yes, there's some bad officiating, but also they give up goals on the power play.
Yeah.
It's because of what Cole said that the Islanders just dominated the front of the net on both ends, which is not something the Bruins are going to look kindly on. They need some defensive help, of course.
They need someone big. They
They
don't have anybody big.
McAvoy's a great player, but he's not.
He's 6 foot. Grizzlick, his partner, is 5'11".
They hit a bad game last night too.
I know, it wasn't very good.
But goaltending, it's like if you even looked at the Washington series, Tuukka didn't win that series for them. They just outscored Washington.
Yep.
That's the thing. So the big question becomes Tuukka Rask. Is he? He's not a bad player. He's a good player, but can he win you a Stanley Cup? I mean, it still remains to be seen after 8-10 years he's been at the helm. So a lot of people clamoring for the backups, the rookies. So what do you think? What should they do in that situation?
Well, I mean, Swayman, you see, he came in Game 5, and I was actually at work at Ken's, and there were a bunch of people at the bar, and I said I gotta go grab something. I said I'll be back, and he'll have already given up a goal, and on his first shot, he gave up a goal.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that his entry into the playoffs was not very good. He's a great player, and the same thing happened with Vladar when Rask took his leave of absence from the last season, the first COVID.
Golf outing also.
Yep. Yeah. And they had Halak and Vladar had to play a couple games against Tampa and didn't play very well. I mean, I think that they're not going to protect. They only can protect one goalie. They'll protect Rask. I don't think they'll protect. They'll get rid of Halak in his contract.
Mm-hmm.
They'll put Swayman in. Luckily, Swayman has an entry level contract, so they can't take him in the expansion draft.
Right.
But I wouldn't be. Sad if we had Swayman as a goalie, but I would like to see a cup and then them just rebuild
it up. Yeah.
Because at that point you don't need to. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that the problem with the expansion draft is it just leaves so many guys open because you have 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie. So with Taylor Hall, it's they can leave him up to free agency and then give him a big contract. But then he might be taking the expansion draft. So it's all a toss up. But that all happens in July. So I'll wait till then to be worried.
Yeah. All right, moving on now to talk a little football. Not too much going on. This is probably one of the deadest times. I mean, we do have the mini camps going on. Aaron Rodgers is still sitting out, looks like. But let's talk about Julio Jones. So he's gone, and he's not to a place that I thought he was going to go. He goes to the Tennessee Titans. So now they get the Julio Jones and A.J. Brown kind of combination. So what are your first? Let's start with Cole here. I know you're big into the fantasy. So what kind of fantasy impact does this have? Not only for Julio Jones, but also Tannehill and A.J. Brown specifically.
Well, fantasy is a lot about targets and how many targets players get because, of course, that gives them more of an opportunity to catch passes and succeed. And Tennessee lost tight end Jonnu Smith, and they lost receivers Corey Davis and Adam Humphries. They're not big names, especially like Adam Humphries, but they did take up a solid amount of targets. And with them leaving, A.J. Brown was in a perfect position to dominate. And Ryan Tannehill has been one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL and so underrated. Of course, they're known as a run-first offense with Derrick Henry in the backfield, but Ryan Tannehill has been up there with touchdown passes for the last 2 seasons, ever since he took over for Marcus Mariota. But there's still going to be a lot of targets to go around in that offense and less attention on A.J. Brown. But one thing that we need to kind of monitor is how much Julio plays because he only played 9 games last season.
That's true.
So, and he's getting older and declining in play. I mean, he's still Julio. He's still awesome. But what if he only plays 10 or 12 games? Then A.J. Brown is still going to get 5 or 6 games to kind of show what he can do. So if Julio can play 15 or 16 games, then it's definitely a knock for A.J. Brown. But it's definitely Julio's health is going to be something to monitor throughout the entire season.
And so Zach, on the field part of it, I was surprised mostly. First of all, I didn't know the Titans were really involved, but also the compensation. I mean, considering that stupid Patriots gave a 2nd-round pick to the Falcons for Mohamed Sanu, which turned out to be a total mistake.
Yeah, Mohamed Sanu.
But were you surprised at the compensation that it wasn't more for Julio Jones, even given his age and his injury history?
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, Cole touched on it. He's not. I don't think he'll play 17 games in the season.
Sorry, 17, yeah.
Yeah, which they added the extra game, which I think is ridiculous. But
yeah.
He's older. He's struggling, and I think that just like Cole said, Corey Davis, he didn't have a bad season last year with A.J. Brown, so that's where they need to pick it up. And no Jonnu Smith, but Jonnu Smith isn't. He's like the guy who gets that one catch for 10 yards and touchdown. He's not.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I know for the Patriots. But I wouldn't be surprised if Derrick Henry gets more touches on the ball. I mean, he obviously gets a lot of touches on the ball, but now they got Julio and A.J. Brown. If that's not working in the game, you got to go to Derrick Henry. But I I don't know how to feel about the Falcons because if Kyle Pitts is a bust, we're done.
No kidding.
Kyle Pitts won't be a bust.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna be a
promise
bust. The fantasy is gonna be so hard because, I won't ever take a rookie guy in the doing because I do snake draft for my fantasy. I will never take a rookie. So if I have to pick a Falcons player, I'll either pick Calvin Ridley or Matt Ryan. I'm not gonna pick Kyle Pitts, but unfortunately we don't have Julio. And
it's gonna be an interesting season for that.
I
just don't know what it does for the Titans. Does it make the Titans a challenger to the Chiefs? I'm not sure because I don't think Julio's going to play a whole lot. And the little Patriots teams I'll throw in there. So Cam Newton gets hurt somehow. He says he got hurt in practice. Could have been in practice. Could have not in practice. So Mac Jones gets some more burn. We'll see how long Cam is out for. But that's kind of the ideal situation for Patriots fans is, especially if Bill really loves Cam. So Cam gets get hurt. Not too bad, but hurt enough that Mac Jones can show what he can do.
I was excited for because I've always been a guy to try and take players off of good teams, but I was excited for Hunter Henry and Keenan Allen in Los Angeles, and now Hunter Henry's with Mac
Patriots.
Jones.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that.
Future Hall of Famer Mac Jones. We'll just go with that.
Oh my lord!
All right, well, a lot going on here, and obviously the major sports, but let's kind of move on to our kind of wrap up of the season here. So let's just go through each of you and talk about let's go sports-wise, the best and worst moment for you of 2020 and 2021 sports-wise.
Sports, what is that TA sports or all sports in
Let's
general?
go all sports.
All sports in general. I don't know. I mean, I would have to say USA a couple weeks ago beat Mexico in the
Yes, they did.
CONCACAF
in the Nations League. Yeah.
Yep, which is I think it's pretty great. I've never loved Christian Pulisic. I mean, I don't think it's been as great as it could be. I was excited for a good Super Bowl, and it wasn't a very good Super Bowl. At TA, the Peyton Jones dunk.
That's mine. Yeah,
that's
mine.
That's would be mine of TA. But in professional sports, I mean, it's not a lot to talk about. I mean, being able to have an NHL season was decent. I mean, I wish I could have gone to a game, but the ticket prices are ridiculous right now. But next year that'll be better. It wasn't the greatest year for sports, but next year I think it'll start to pick back up, especially professional-wise. Everyone will be back in the stands, and won't be restrictions, and it'll be all good.
Cole, best and worst moment of this year?
I mean, the Bruins game one of the second round for the Bruins has to be up there. With the fans coming back, it just felt like even watching it on TV, you could just feel how the energy coming from TD Garden. Worst, I'm a Golden State Warriors fan.
Ew.
We
had a lot of moments to choose from then.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we basically put out a G League team this season, besides Steph, of course. But we sold in the fourth quarter against the Lakers, and then we played the Memphis Grizzlies, and we just don't have any experience, and that was a painful loss. Mm-hmm. And we better hope Klay Thompson plays at an all-star level, or else we're toast.
I don't think he will
said
be.
he don't think he ever
I don't
played,
think he ever will be.
yeah.
I think they're the only good thing they got from this year was that, like you said, the G League team, guys like Jordan Poole, and they played that bad. Yeah. I mean, Andrew Wiggins going to need to step up, but Draymond is okay. I mean, I think Klay will come back, but Klay won't be anything. But I mean, John Morant played well in that game. There wasn't much that the Warriors going to do.
We could have won that Grizzlies game if Draymond Green at the end of regulation had just put up a floater instead of running into a guy. And wasn't even really a shot.
No. I would say favorite moment, again, Peyton Jones dunk, because, again, not a great year for the Patriots, obviously. Peyton Jones dunk was really cool to be there for that moment, especially because, the players went crazy on that. I would say the worst moment, honestly, I'll just keep it TA related, is the fall season. I would just say the fall season because having to sit there and watch our varsity football team, who would have probably won a state championship, or definitely been in the top 2 or 3, having to play 7-on-7, and it was just cool to see. It was great to see them, make some great plays, but it's this should not be in t-shirts and shorts. There's some really cold nights there as well. I had a live stream every single one, for the freshmen. Some cold nights in there in the fall. So I think that was the downside. It's especially when you saw other states who had a lot fewer COVID cases playing football. That's what really got frustrated for me, because we didn't really spike in cases here in Maine until much later in the year.
And it was a lot in northern Maine too, those places.
So it's I think they were a little too cautious in my mind to cancel the season like that, but hopefully this year coming up they can get back to normal. Okay, and kind of our last TA sports question of this season. What's the one thing we asked Mr. Stevens, what would you change about sports in general? What would you change about TA sports? It could be a team, it could be a location, it could be anything that you want.
I think that they should, instead of doing, I know that they've been I don't know if are they even still working on the big arena?
It's still in the works. Yeah,
I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
I think that they should finish that, actually finish it, because they're supposed to
start it first.
Well, there's supposed to be an indoor track, a couple basketball
it's gonna be
courts,
a huge
weight
facility.
room.
Yep.
Or they go for a hockey arena. I hate
Never gonna happen. Moving on.
BIA. I hate the Biddeford Ice Arena. It would be, they could make such a nice arena, and but obviously we don't have the greatest hockey team. So like if we had I forget what the place is called that always wins the state title. But like if we had a great team that every year after year after year, and we had guys coming from other places to come play for us, that'd be great. But yeah, just finish that. Just finish the stadium. Like
I'll just say this. Okay, so the field house or whatever, that's definitely still in the works.
Yeah.
The two things that will never be on campus here are an ice rink and a pool. People have always asked, why do we have a pool? Pools bleed money, and even if you rent it out to other people, I guess the hope. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but maybe I want to say almost 10 years ago, or maybe less than that. The Portland Pirates, when they're still around, were looking for a new facility. They wanted to move out of Portland, and there was rumors that they were going to build one in Saco, which they did. They built a practice facility, but they were going to build like an arena there, and that's where TA would have been the home, and it would have replaced Biddeford Ice Arena. But in the end, the Pirates kind of backed out of it, and they used it as a practice facility instead. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think you'll ever see a hockey rink.
The Portland Pirates had a struggling year. They moved to the Lewiston Auburn. There's this arena there, and then I remember I went to the first game of that, and it was a full lot. Like the teams came out, and there was a full brawl, and they ended up leaving that after that season.
Yeah,
it was
the Maine Mariners, which are not even in the AHL, they're in some other league.
They're in the ECHL, which is kind of like it's just kind of a little younger. Yeah.
Cole, your what would you change about TA sports?
I could not think of any answers to this question, but I would definitely like to see the field house get built before I graduate.
I know.
Time's running out for you.
I know. I remember my sister being like, "Oh, I'm gonna miss that by a couple years," and Mom's like, "Oh yeah, Zach, you'll have it when you're like a freshman or sophomore." And like I go by there all the time, and I just see the big crates of just materials, but nothing built.
Yep.
This is kind of random, but air conditioning in the gym. It's
Lord.
hot. Summer basketball.
All the time, even in wintertime. We go in there in the winter games, and it's like 90 degrees in there. So I think that'll be part of the new HVAC will definitely be on the agenda.
Yeah.
Building the field house and then redoing that gym. The one thing I would change would be getting rid of the baby powder. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really care about the baby powder that much. I think. I guess again, this is kind of a selfish thing. I wish that we had better access to wired internet at all of our fields.
Yeah.
Like we have obviously in the gym and the stadium we're great, but we're not able to do any games for baseball or softball. Because of we can only use Wi-Fi and it's tough, and it's really same with tennis too. I mean, it's just it'd be really expensive. So it's not the school's fault. It's just no other schools would do that.
That would help us out a lot because the baseball and softball seasons sometimes are a little bit later than the spring sports. So if we get some wired internet, we could go out there because they have great teams. And
it's fun to be outside, and it's not too bad. All right, so. Kind of our off-the-wall question today, as you mentioned before, Zach, you're a Ken's Seafood place. So what is your go-to order? Let's say you're at the end of a long shift, you're starving. What do you get there?
So I will say I'm not a slide of Ken's, but sometimes the food at the end of the night isn't as warm.
Let's assume that it's normal. Let's assume it's in the perfect condition.
I don't know because I'm a basic old nuggets and fries kind of guy with the homemade tartar sauce because that's just something I get for lunch when I go to work.
Yeah.
I mean the fried shrimp is good, the fried clams are good, the baked haddock is good. I think that we have fried oysters this year, which is okay, but. It's just all good. Like I've gotten used to the fried smell and just like the being there. Yeah. I've never tried oysters. I'd like to try that. But other than that, I would say probably just the basic old fried nuggets and fries.
I'm not an oyster fan. I tried really good oysters, like the raw ones.
Yep.
No, still tastes like sand in the ocean to me. It wasn't good. Cole, I don't know if you want to do Ken's or any summer place. Like, what's your go-to order in the summer?
Well, shrimp is one of my favorite foods, so fried shrimp.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, the fried shrimp is I think I like all seafoods, but I think the fried shrimp are the most safe in terms of they're always going to taste good. Fried scallops are great, but sometimes the scallops are too big or too small. Same with the clams and fried haddock even on a sandwich is not bad, but the fried shrimp are pretty legit. What's another place that you go to in the summertime just for food?
If we're talking about seafood, Hewitt's is a pretty good place.
Yeah. Be competitor.
Yeah. I mean, not in the, I mean, kind of in the area. I mean,
Yeah.
we've
It's like a 25-minute drive.
Yeah,
between the
we've
two, so.
outed Bailey's. I mean, they can't even open 7 days a week because they don't get any business.
Right.
Yeah, Hewitt's is good though. I like Hewitt's.
You know what's crazy thing? I've never once been to the clam bake.
I used
driven by
to
100
go.
times.
It's just I don't know. It's
Touristy. I mean, it's what it is. It's a nice view, but no, I drive by it all the time. But the problem with Ken's for me is that I don't get it often because it's so far away from my house. It's like a 20-minute drive, and unless you're gonna eat there, it's like fried seafood's not great. 20 minutes later.
Where I live in the middle of nowhere, Buxton, Saco, on that line, so I'm not too far from Ken's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so not terrible, but
yeah. In the summer, I mean, I do the seafood stuff, but I'm still I don't mind a late night wraps run. So let's just wrap up our season here. Let's just your thoughts overall in the year, whether it's sports or school related. Let's start with Cole.
Well, I'm already a quarter of the way done high school, which is crazy to think about. I can't believe I'm almost a sophomore, and I'm so happy for this school year to be over. And I'm happy for. It sounds like it's going to be a normal school year next year, which is awesome.
Yeah, obviously, I'm excited for junior. I mean, not for junior year homework, but junior year in general. I get a feeling of like it's almost summer break on like the Thursday or the day before, but right now I'm just like it's whatever. I almost feel like it's already summer. I'm excited for Fry Island. I'm excited to watch some summer sports and just be outside and be enjoying the weather. Hopefully it's not super hot. I did not like the 90-degree weather at the beginning of this week. But yeah, I'm excited for the summer and for the next couple of years at TA.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. I'm glad for the year to be over, moving on to a new position. And for me, I'm taking a very long vacation, going to Mexico for a month. So I'm going to be sitting on the beach. I will be enjoying that hot weather that you talked about, but at least there they have air conditioning everywhere, and I'll be right on the Gulf of Mexico with a pool and everything. So just after a year and a half of basically stuck at home inside, it's time for a long trip. So again, we just want to thank you for joining us this shortened season. We should have tried this earlier in the year, but we got 6 episodes in. But we'll definitely be back in the fall with more sports talk. Hopefully we'll have some people who want to talk not just about sports. We'll have other podcasts here going on the TA Facebook page and the YouTube page, and we'll work on getting on Spotify or Pandora, one of those as well. So for all of us that have joined us this year, all of our guests, all the kids that have come, and of course for Cole and Zach, I'm Jeff Christenberry saying thanks very much. Have a great summer, and we'll see you in August.